Chess, a game as old as time, has been adapted into multiple different mediums. Chess, but on a board. Chess, but if it was a TV show. And chess if you had interdimensional time travel. But what if chess was like the Binding of Isaac? Well... Passant, named after the stupidest chess move, was a game that released in 2025, and have you heard of Balatro? I haven't. Passant takes on a pretty simple structure. You start off with a few different setups and you have to battle your way through increasingly difficult opponent setups until you've beat 5 stages, consisting of 2 levels and a boss stage. This structure works pretty well. The only thing with it is that it's surprisingly long. Despite the multiple win conditions you have for each level, the time it takes to beat a run, for me, takes between 45 minutes and an hour to beat, and it feels like it. If you have to play every stage like I do, because I don't get the point of skipping shops, and if you skip a level, you're probably just gonna die on the next one, you end up playing 15 chess matches, which, yeah, can start getting quite long later on in the game because it's a turn-based strategy game, which isn't exactly known for being very fast. The main gameplay though, it's chess. No way. The main gameplay differences from main chess comes from the fact you have 3 undos, which honestly is a godsend. This game would feel impossible without it for the most part, because most people suck at chess. I am one of them. You also have a variety of new pieces you can add, which basically are just slightly modified pieces already in the game, such as the archer, which is a short-range bishop, which doesn't move when attacking, and the camel, which does an even bigger L-shaped jump than a knight. You also have combo pieces which share traits between 2 pieces, such as the dragon bishop, which moves like a king, and a bishop. A lot of these pieces do feel somewhat overly powerful, especially with one of the win conditions being consecutive checks, which can be made incredibly easy by some of these pieces. However, that's sort of balanced around the prices in the shops. After each match, you get a shop where you can buy pieces, coins, and badges. Coins are used during the match or are instant upgrades, and god, they're so incredibly useful, I just forget to use them. Unless they're an upgrade coin, they only last that match, and while for the most part being quite powerful, using a turn to gain a coin is pretty damn good. Since they are only a one-time use, they don't feel broken. You also have badges too, which I'm a bit mixed with. The only way you get badges is from the setup or buying them from the shop. While a fine system, it doesn't really lead to experimentation. You can easily just not buy a badge and think it's completely useless without even trying it. I personally prefer systems like Isaac or Gungeon, where you don't know what every item or thing may do until after you've picked it up or even just used it, with there still being a shop. I do understand why something like that isn't here, as it just wouldn't really work with Passant's structure, or just a roguelike that isn't a dungeon crawler. I feel like a lot of these badges are mostly balanced though, but I don't use some because I just don't think they'll be very useful. I am also someone who doesn't re-roll shops often, so my opinion's probably invalid. After shopping and playing 15 rounds of increasingly difficult chess matches, you just win. What? Yeah, there isn't really a final boss or any sort of climax, it's just another boss stage, which is very similar to all the previous ones, and then boom, you did it, you won. This for me just feels incredibly anticlimactic. Even if a boss is easy, still having that final little challenge or difference or spectacle or just something unique at the end helps a lot with making the experience feel more complete. If Mom was replaced with one of the random bosses that could appear in any of the previous levels, it would feel a lot more underwhelming to just end there. I'm talking about Isaac again. Here, while it's understandable why there isn't a final battle thingy because it's chess, I feel like you could have done something to make it feel more significant. At the moment, it's just underwhelming when you finish run. I do get why there isn't a final boss thing though, because I believe it's meant to be more focused on the endless aspect, which yeah, in general I'm not a fan of endless. I personally like having the set goal to achieve in my games, and I don't think Passant is arcadey enough for me to like the endless experience. I do think the endless is interesting though, as the opponent starts getting 3 lines of pieces to work with where you only remain with 2. Still not that big of a fan, which also applies to the setups you are given. The setups are mixed to say the least. A lot of the setups are kind of crummy and not that fun to use, or can get incredibly frustrating. The first setup is one that I just struggle to actually use. It's just a bunch of pawns and one special piece which causes the adjacent enemy pieces to be unable to move. The lines of pawns are just hard to use in the early matches, and for me, end up being removed by the mid game, and a special piece I can just not utilize. Since it moves like a king, it is incredibly difficult to get into a position where it would be useful, and not just a piece that is kinda filler. Another setup which can just kill you is the pushing one and the explosion one. It can be surprisingly easy to get your king into a position where the opponent can just kill it, and the Splippy one especially can get incredibly annoying. You have to make every move in anticipation for the fact that every piece is going to move an extra space forward, if it can, when taking a piece or even just moving it. It really quickly just gets plain annoying. Now, you can sell the things that make these setups unique. Yeah, you can, but that kind of feels like cheating, honestly. You're basically destroying the main balancing or unique part that makes the setup different, and poof, it's gone. Will it make it better? Yeah, but why should I have to ignore the gimmicks of a setup and the main point to actually enjoy them? I feel like the main gimmicks of a setup should make them more enjoyable, or just enjoyable by default. I also don't like how you kind of have to concede if you get to a point where you just can't really do anything and your opponent can't really checkmate you. It would just be a nice quality of life thing if you have a loose condition of having no pieces or figures or just something to make it work better and not require a concession. I don't think that's the right word, but we'll go with it. Anyway, Passant overall is pretty fun. Despite being a bit anticlimactic, it's still quite fun. I like chess, and this is an interesting spin on it. But what if you think this is still lame? In the end, it's just chess with new pieces. You know what chess needs? A gun. Shotgun King is, you guessed it, a dancing game. Shotgun King is a chess roguelike, but your army has been replaced by a shotgun. You have 12 floors of chess games to clear, and after you beat a floor, you get to choose from a card pair. One of those cards are for you, one of those cards are for your opponent, and then you have a final boss on floor 12. I personally adore how these cards work in this game. Since every card you get to benefit yourself, your opponent also gets a card to benefit them. This creates an interesting dynamic where you have to toss up whether or not you or your opponent will benefit more off what card pair you select. Maybe one card is better than the other, but it's paired with something that would make the next floors a lot harder. So you need to decide if that card paired would be better than a weaker card for you, but also a weaker card for your opponent. It's a really cool dynamic, which I just really like, which encourages you to experiment with cards more, while also adding more strategy than just picking the more powerful card. The cards you can select from are just all fun to use. I haven't found any cards that felt kinda pointless, because all of them have some modifier which can be useful, even to someone who's an idiot like me. The closest is one card that lets you see an opponent's predicted move, but even that has the benefit of letting you re-roll a card pair if you don't like it. Other than that, you can get sword, grenades, charges to ammo count, and amount of ammo you have in your gun, the amount of bullet shard thingies you shoot out, firing angle, and probably more that I'm forgetting of. I also like how they changed this so that each piece has different health and other stats. Makes it so that this actually works and isn't painfully easy for the most part. The changes they make to the stand chess part are definitely a good thing, and just really suit this game and make it feel even more different while still at its core feeling like chess. You also have a variety of different shotguns with starting stats you can pick between. They don't change up the game that much, and I usually just use the first ones you get. Recently I've been using one where you've got a little knife at the end, but the others are still not bad. None of them really feel that much better or worse, mainly just different. I feel like I could, with similar efforts, reach the final boss and beat him, which, yeah, the final boss isn't really that hard. Final White King is, well, he is a boss. He is just a king piece, but takes up a 2x2 area, can't attack diagonally for some reason, and has a lot more health than a standard king piece. Now, this sounds like it should be harder in theory, but the significantly larger area he takes up makes it so much easier to deal damage to him and actually hit him than a regular king, which isn't really offset by the health buff. His large footprint also displaces the pieces in the lineup and causes them to be a lot more squished on the edges, making a lot of the piece have a lot less fortunate starting positions, and I just find that usually the change in layout makes it easier, not harder. Despite this, I do prefer it over Passant's approach because at least this feels like an ending. It's satisfying to finish the final stage because you know you've won and there's some form of more climactic thing that happens. You also have two other modes besides the basic roguelike. You have Endless, which is how you get an endless thing because the main throne mode, which is what I've been talking about, doesn't actually give you the ability to continue on after you beat the White King. I'm personally not the biggest fan of this endless mode, mainly because I'm just not a fan of endless looping and regular roguelikes that much in the first place. But from what I've played, it's pretty decent, and I do think the challenge, after you've gotten all your cards, ramps up somewhat appropriately most of the time. I still would much rather just do the throw mode, especially because I haven't done all difficulties, because there's like 15 of them. That's a lot, and I suck at chess. But the option is one of the better ones, I believe. There's also chase mode, where random pieces get summoned on the board edges, and you have to kill as many as possible before you die. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this one. I don't think it's a bad mode. I just don't think it's for me, so I find it very Overall though, Shotgun King, it's pretty fun. So, chess roguelikes. I would have covered another one, but I realized it hasn't come out, and I missed the playtest. That was very disappointing when I found that out. But yeah, they're fun. Yeah, that's it. There isn't much more to buy.